Hi everyone, in this video, I'm going to explain how to handle exception. See, exception means what? Exception is a runtime error that will terminate the program execution abnormally. So if you control that, if you handle that exception so that we can avoid the abnormal termination. How can we avoid means what? They have given one block called a try block. So what try block contains? The try block always contains the doubtful code. So let me write here. Here, they have given one block is a try block. The try block always consists the doubtful code that may raises the exception. If you think any code that raises exception, see for example, whenever you are reading the input from the user, if you want to read integer from the user, they may enter integer or they may not enter the integer, right? So success case and failure case. If there are two situations, the chance of getting exception means that will become the doubtful code that you have to place in the try block. Suppose if exception occurs in the try block, so then what will happen? An object will be created. When problem occurs, it will create an object, and that object is called exception object. It is exception object with the message. It contains the details. So what is that exception, right? What is that error occur and all? At some location, at some address, object will be created. That object you have to collect and handle. So how can we collect? Means using the catch block. Here you should specify the type of exception into that variable we collect, and here handling logic we write. Let me explain clearly. Suppose if you are creating object for test class, you will create object test class like this, and the object address you will collect into a variable, any variable t of which type? Class type test, right? If you are creating object for suppose employee class, new employee, you will collect the object address into a variable of type is a employee type. And next, suppose if you are creating object for student, right? You will collect that into a variable s is of type what? Student type. So nothing but whenever you are creating the object, whenever you are creating the object, at some location that object will be created, we should collect that address into a variable. We should collect that address into a variable. It is of same type only. Which type? The class type. This is important. And in the same way, so whenever we are executing an exception code, that will raise the exception. Nothing but that will create the exception object. To collect that exception object address, right, we need to declare the same type of variable. If it is an arithmetic exception, we collect into arithmetic exception. If it is a null pointer exception, we collect into null pointer exception. If it is array index out of bounds exception, we collect into array index out of bounds exception. The same exception type you have to specify because it has to hold the address. Exception object address, it should hold the variable. So the type is important. Don't write integer, float, double and all. It should be the class type only. Now let me explain with one example. Right here I'm taking, I just want to read two numbers from the user and perform the addition operation. Import java.util.scanner. I'm creating object of scanner class. Scan equals to new scanner of system.in. and I ask to enter two numbers. System.out.println, enter two integers. Clearly, I mentioned what they have to enter. Two integers they have to enter. The first one we collect into a variable x. How to read? Using the nextInt method. And the second one we collect into y. After reading the two numbers, we are adding them. Z is equal to x plus y and printing them. System.out.println. The result is z. That z we are printing. We are reading the two numbers using the scanner class. And then we are adding and printing them. But here it is the two situations we need to understand. The first situation, if they enter the valid data, for example, they enter values 10 and 5, right? 10 plus 5 value is a 15. But the exception code, how can you guarantee that they will input always integers only, right? They may enter strings also. Suppose A, B, C. So that you cannot collect into integer variable. NextInt method cannot accept string. That will accept integer only. See, when you run this, you will get the exception. Which exception? Input mismatch exception. Is belongs to which package? Util package. So you have to handle this. This is the code that will generate the problem. Okay. So we have written that code in try block. We have written the code in try block. Right? Chance of getting which exception? Input mismatch exception. So whenever problem occurs, it will create an object of input mismatch exception type only. So we should collect into the same type, input mismatch exception type. Any variable name you can take, E. Here you can write your own code. Your message you can give, exception. What is that exception? Invalid input given. This message will display. This message will display to the user. That is. But invalid input mismatch exception is belongs to util package that we have to import. Import java.util.input mismatch exception. This is the way. Now when we execute the two situations, suppose if you enter the valid data only 10 and 5. See, if the two instructions execute perfectly, nothing but if there is no exception, the catch block will not execute. If you give 10 and 5, it will collect 10 and 5, it will perform the addition operation and it will print the result. If there is no exception, the catch block will not execute. So that output is 15 will display. So when catch block execute, when exception occurs, if they enter A, B, C string, then exception. Right here it is exception, invalid input given. Now the message is very clear to the end user. Right? So whatever the message you have written, that message will show on the screen. So whenever there is a wrong input. This is the way we are handling exception in Java using try catch block. So try block always consists the doubtful code that raises exception. If exception occurs, one object will be created. That object is called exception object. We have to catch that object address in catch block. So the same type of variable you have to create in the catch block. This is exception handling process in Java. Hope you understood. Please practice. Thank you.